Death quietly approaches Sagittarius when there is no life partner beside them. Have you ever felt that death doesn't always arrive with a final breath? Sometimes, it comes quietly, slowly, without warning, without fanfare, just a day you wake up and realize you are no longer yourself. For Sagittarius, souls born to explore, to love, to live with blazing passion, true death begins when there is no longer a partner by their side. No eyes following their journey. No one waiting for them to return from their wanderings. And in that moment, the seemingly unbreakable heart begins to silently crack. Do you think that a zodiac sign that loves freedom like Sagittarius could fall apart just from the absence of one person? They don't say a word. They still smile. Still tell stories of faraway lands. But inside, a part of them slowly falls into darkness. Because without someone to share ideals with, to trust, to dream together, everything they chase suddenly becomes meaningless. In the next few minutes, I will tell you a story not just about Sagittarius, but about a wake-up call from the universe. A sign you must not miss. If you have ever loved, ever lost, ever felt alone in a crowded life, then this message is for you. Do not leave. Because perhaps what you are about to hear is the key that opens the door your heart has long kept shut. There is one thing I have always deeply believed in after decades of studying astrology and listening to thousands of life stories. Nothing in this world happens randomly. No emptiness is meaningless. Especially not for those who carry the undying light of Sagittarius. I have seen Sagittarians who are so resilient it seemed nothing could break them. They have walked through the coldest winters of life, and no one realized their hearts were also freezing from within. They are the flames that refuse to die out. But they are also the most fragile souls, when their hearts have no one to wait for. No one to believe in the journey they are on. You know, there are people who live in solitude and still call it peace. But Sagittarius is not like that. For them, solitude is not silence. It is inner desolation. They may wander the world, but without a gaze that understands them, a heart that walks beside them, every road becomes empty. And then, they begin to die slowly. No one notices. No crying. Just a gaze losing direction. A breath no longer filled with excitement. A day when even they no longer want to keep dreaming. When I look at the birth chart of a Sagittarius, I always pause longer at the 7th house, the house of deep relationships. And I realize, behind that adventurous, free, sometimes reckless appearance, lies a deep longing for connection, a yearning that comes from the soul. Do not misunderstand them. Sagittarius doesn't need anyone to live. But they do need someone to live authentically. Because love to them is not dependency. It is two people looking toward the same direction, toward ideals, truth, and the horizon of the soul. I once asked a Sagittarius, if you had to choose between a wealthy life in solitude or a difficult journey with your soulmate, what would you choose? She answered without hesitation, I'd choose the companion. Because what I can discover out there will never matter as much as what I can discover in that person's heart. And that is the first lesson I want to share today. There are souls born not to be alone. They need love not to fill a void, but to awaken the divine light within themselves. Sagittarius is one of those souls. Have you ever noticed? When Sagittarians fall in love, they often change the way they see the world. They begin writing poems, learning to cook, becoming patient, learning to wait, things they once believed were impossible for them. Love, for them, is the greatest motivation for self-improvement. And also the greatest collapse when it is lost. It is not just the loss of a person. It is the loss of a part of themselves that once was the most beautiful. I want you to remember this, whether you are Sagittarius or carry Sagittarius energy. If you are walking alone, if your days feel like repetitive cycles of habit and sadness, do not blame yourself for being weak. It is a sign your soul is missing a deep connection the universe once promised you. And sometimes, that absence is not a punishment, but a test. The universe is watching. Do you have the patience to wait for the one truly meant for you? Do you have the strength to not settle for temporary relationships just to fill the loneliness? I have lived long enough to witness many people abandon their hearts because they could not endure the emptiness. But I have also witnessed Sagittarians choose to live authentically, and eventually find someone who made them never doubt themselves again. And the second lesson I draw is this. Sometimes you must walk through the darkness of loneliness to learn to cherish the true light. The spiritual death Sagittarius is going through in the absence of a romantic partner is not an ending. It is a necessary stage for their soul to be refined, for their bow to be drawn once again, but this time aimed at a worthy destination. Astrology does not teach us to avoid fate. It teaches us to recognize the hidden lessons behind every loss. And if you are a Sagittarius feeling lost in love, remember, you are not alone. The universe is walking silently beside you. Your guardian angel is still whispering signs only your heart can hear. Do not cover your ears to intuition. Do not close your heart just because someone was once unworthy. Because the final lesson I want to offer you today is this. True love never makes you shrink. It makes you expand, just like the sky Sagittarius always longs for. I know, opening your heart again after being hurt is never easy. But if you're still listening at this point, perhaps you're like me. Someone who believes that there is still someone being guided by the universe to come closer to you each day. And that person won't just be a lover. They will be a spiritual companion, a destined partner. The absence you feel right now is merely the silence before the symphony of true love begins. Do not give up. Do not close your heart. Because Sagittarius deserves something far greater than ordinary love. And you will not be waiting in vain. If these words resonate with your heart, write down a commitment to the universe. I am ready to receive the love destined for my soul. Don't just write it for me. Write it for yourself. Because when you declare something with all your heart, the universe responds with its most miraculous gifts. And I believe, the light you once lost, is on its way back to you. There is a powerful moment I once witnessed in an astrology session with a middle-aged Sagittarius woman. She sat quietly, her hand on her heart, and said something I could never forget. I don't know when I lost that man. But the most painful thing wasn't that he left. It was that since he disappeared, I no longer recognize myself. That was when I understood. For Sagittarius, losing a romantic partner is not just sadness. It's a long fall that makes them stop believing in the arrow they once proudly drew. Because that person wasn't just a companion, they were the mirror in which Sagittarius saw themselves in their most vulnerable moments. When that partner is gone, Sagittarius doesn't just face absence. They begin to question their own worth. If you're feeling lost, write this down. I am ready to be seen, to be loved, and to be myself again. Because the healing journey truly begins when you admit you've gone off course, not because you are weak, but because you once loved deeply. In astrology, a soulmate for Sagittarius doesn't necessarily have to be someone just like them. But it must be someone deep enough to understand the ideals Sagittarius lives for. Fire signs like Aries or Leo can ignite passion. But only water signs like Cancer or Pisces can help them reconnect with their soul. And the absence of such a person often causes Sagittarius to lose their sacred connection, the one they hold with their divine essence. A partner isn't meant to be someone you cling to. They are meant to help you expand. To reignite the courage you once had but forgot because of pain. And if right now you feel like an archer standing in a vast open field, not knowing where to aim your arrow anymore, then stop. Breathe slowly. Close your eyes. And ask, what am I truly looking for? Because maybe You don't need someone to save you. You just need someone who loves you enough to make you want to save yourself. Write this down. I am returning to my heart. Because as long as you can still feel pain, it means you are still alive. And to be alive means there is still hope. I have always believed, loss doesn't come to take something away from you. It comes to remind you of what you once had but forgot how to cherish. Sagittarius is usually brave. But because they're so used to standing up on their own, they forget that they too deserve to be received, to be loved, without having to prove anything. They don't need to be perfect. They just need to be trusted. And if someone once left you when you were at your weakest, perhaps they weren't the one God intended to walk the full journey with you. Astrology teaches me that every separation leaves a mark on the birth chart. Pluto, the planet of death and rebirth, when passing through the 7th house, often forces us to confront the end of a significant relationship. But that ending is not meant to destroy you. It is there so you can learn to love yourself more deeply before loving someone else. It's a bitter lesson, but a necessary one. And Sagittarius, with a heart that always leans toward the light, is one of the few zodiac signs that can turn pain into soul evolution. If you've ever gone through a relationship that made you stop believing in love, leave a comment. I deserve a love that heals. Because writing it down is also a way to begin. A declaration to the universe that you are ready for something better. Over the years doing this work, I have witnessed Sagittarians who thought everything was over, only to meet someone months later who made them forget every old wound. Not because that person was perfect, but because they made Sagittarius feel like themselves again. That vibrant, joyful, courageous self, no longer afraid of being abandoned. That's not a miracle. That's the reward for those who dared to stay with the pain, instead of running from it. I want you to believe this: none of us were born to be alone forever. God did not place you on this earth to walk it alone. And if you are currently in a season of solitude, perhaps it is just the quiet before your destined person appears. What you need to do now is not to look for them, but to be ready when they arrive. Write this down. I am ready to open my heart without fear of being hurt. Because sometimes, just one small statement can open a great door for something extraordinary to enter your life. If you're still listening to these final words, then I believe you are a courageous Sagittarius. You didn't come here to run away. You came here to face the pain, to understand yourself, and then, to rise again. Because you were born to fly. And true love will not hold you back. It will give you wings to fly even farther, but this time, not alone. Let me tell you a true story about a Sagittarius man entering his 50s. He used to be strong, had a loving wife, and went on journeys across the world that many people could only dream of. But one day, that woman left, taking with her the last bit of peace his heart had been clinging to. He kept traveling, kept smiling, kept telling everyone, "I'm fine." But deep down, every evening when he returned to the cold room, when his ex-wife's laughter was just a memory in dreams, he knew he was slowly dying, little by little. To others, it was just a divorce. But to him, it was a soul-shattering. Because a life partner isn't just someone who holds your hand through the good days. They're the one who stays through your worst days. When that person is gone, the cracks don't show on the skin, but they're visible in the eyes and in the way we walk through life. For Sagittarius, that is even more brutal, because they once believed that love is something that never disappears. And when it's lost, they don't just lose a person. They lose their belief in meaningful existence. If you've ever felt this way, write down, "I accept the past, but I'm ready for a new beginning." Because sometimes, we don't need to erase the memories. We just need to learn how to stand up and move on, no longer bound by them. Astrology says that whenever the 4th house, the house of memories and roots, is heavily influenced by Saturn or Pluto, old wounds return. And the strange thing is, they don't come back to punish us. They come back to ask one question: have you truly forgiven? Forgiven that person. And forgiven yourself, for trusting too much. For being too naive. For being too hurt. And you know what? Only when a Sagittarius learns to forgive their own heart are they truly ready to love again, without fear. There is something very special about Sagittarius. They don't love with logic. They love with the soul. That's why when a partner leaves, they don't just take away their presence. They take dreams, plans, and sometimes even their sense of identity. I've met many Sagittarians who lost themselves after a breakup. They changed how they dressed, how they spoke, even where they lived, just to forget one person. But I always told them, you don't need to become someone else to heal. You just need to return to who you once were, the version that shined the brightest. Write down, I am ready to return to myself, no matter what happened. Because no one but you can rewrite the story your heart truly wants to live. I remember once, while analyzing the birth chart of a Sagittarius born in December, I noticed a Venus retrograde cycle that aligned with the date of her breakup. When I told her, she cried. Not out of pain, but because for the first time in her life, she felt that the universe hadn't abandoned her. That everything had a reason. And that if she was patient enough, trusting enough, willing to listen, even pain was working for her, not against her. I want you to know, you are not alone. If right now you're going through days of emptiness, with no one to talk to in the morning, no one asking, have you eaten yet? Do not despair. Because sometimes, God lets someone walk out of your life to prepare for the arrival of someone you truly need. No one leaves without teaching us something. And no one comes without bringing a gift for our soul, even if that gift is wrapped in tears at first. If you believe someone is being prepared by the universe for you, write down. I open my heart to the one who is coming, no longer bound by the one who left. Because in the moment you are truly ready, the miracle will begin to happen. To me, one of the clearest signs of spiritual maturity is the ability to sit with your pain without judging it. Sagittarius often chooses to skip over, move on, do something else to forget. But sometimes, the only thing you need to do is sit still, in silence, and ask, what does my heart truly need? Not to satisfy the ego, but to listen to the voice of the soul. Astrology is the language of things left unspoken. And it shows that if you are Sagittarius, you will always be guided back to your true self. Even if you have to go through the most painful losses. Because deep down, your soul was never programmed to merely endure. It was meant to learn how to rise, from the very things that seemed destined to bury you. If these words are touching something deep within you, leave a heartfelt comment. I am healing, and I am ready for a new chapter in my life. Because nothing can begin again unless you dare to turn the page. There is one thing that people who are not Sagittarius often don't understand. When someone of this zodiac sign becomes silent, it's not because they don't want to speak. It's because they've spoken too much, opened their heart too fully, given away too much light, only to receive back a cold emptiness and rejections that needed no explanation. And at that very moment, Sagittarius begins to bury their sorrow deep within, pushing it to the bottom of their soul, a place even light struggles to reach. But the saddest thing isn't that they are sad. It's that no one knows they are sad. I once asked an older Sagittarius man what he regretted most in life. He sat in silence for a long time, then said, I once lost someone. Not because I didn't love her, but because I didn't know how to love when I was already broken. And no one noticed. That statement, to me, was like a birth chart written by the heart. A map that many Sagittarians carry, full of fractures, full of misdirections. Simply because they tried to be strong when what they really needed was to be held and told. It's okay. You don't always have to be perfect. You just need to be yourself. If you've ever felt like you had to keep it together so others wouldn't see your pain, write down, I allow myself to be vulnerable so I can become stronger. Because only when you dare to fall honestly can you rise steadily. Astrology doesn't just speak of planets and stars. It speaks of the healing journey a soul must undertake throughout this life. And for Sagittarius, the greatest challenge is not dangerous travels or bold decisions. It's learning to turn inward, to stay still within themselves, and face the invisible loneliness. That's when the planets move into the 12th house, the house of darkness, of the deep subconscious. Where every wound is laid bare not to torment, but to understand and forgive. I once saw in the birth chart of a middle-aged Sagittarius woman a cycle where Jupiter had returned to its original position after nearly 12 years. This often signals a major transformation in beliefs and life philosophy. When I asked her if there was something unspoken in her heart, she remained quiet for a long time before gently exhaling, I've never forgiven the man who left me. But what hurts more is, I've never forgiven myself for loving him so much. And that is what I want to say to you today, the deepest forgiveness isn't for others. It's for your own heart, for having had the courage to love. Even when you knew you could be hurt. If you feel like you're still carrying a burden from the past, write down, I forgive myself for loving with all my heart. Because love is never wrong. Only the way we hold on to pain for too long turns it into a weight. Sagittarius is always known as the sign of freedom. But true freedom isn't about not being tied to anyone. It's about loving someone so deeply that you're not afraid of losing them. When you no longer hold someone through control, but through presence and trust. And to reach that point, you must go through a long emotional maturation, a journey that only souls who have once died in love can understand. I know there are nights when you sit by the window for a long time. Not to look at the view, but just to feel that you are still alive. But you go on living, working, smiling with others as if your heart had never collapsed. And that's why I say, Sagittarius are silent warriors. They love as if tomorrow doesn't exist. And when betrayed, they retreat inward as if trying to disappear. But they don't disappear. They are reborn. And each time they rise again, they fly farther, shine brighter, grow stronger. If you're going through a rebirth that no one understands, leave a comment. I am quietly rising again, and something beautiful is coming. Because no one needs to understand you, as long as you don't reject yourself. Astrology shows that in middle age, when Saturn returns to its original orbit, usually around age 58 to 60, many Sagittarians face their final lesson in solitude, to live honestly, love truthfully, and fear no longer being abandoned. Because when you can love without needing to be loved back, that is when love becomes sacred. And that is also when the universe will bring you someone who doesn't come to complete you, but to journey alongside you. Fully. I have met Sagittarius couples who found each other again after 30 years apart. I've seen the way they look at each other, no longer with youthful excitement, but with the peace that youth could never provide. And I believe, each of us will find our person, someday. If we do not give up. If you still hold on to hope, even just a flicker, write down, I believe in love, even if life has taught me how to doubt. Because faith is the bridge between your heart and miracles. And finally, I want you to understand, no wound is forever. No loss is meaningless. If you're walking through a dark night of the soul, know this, the light never disappears. It is only waiting for you to believe in it once again. I remember vividly a conversation with a Sagittarius woman in her 60s. She said that for over 20 years after her husband died, she couldn't love anyone else. Not because her heart had stopped feeling, but because she believed no one could continue the unfinished dreams they once had together. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She simply lived in silence, as if half of her soul had left forever. And all I could do, upon hearing that, was hold her hand and say, "The universe never takes away without leaving something in return. Maybe not another person, but it will always leave a gift." In astrology, death is not merely a physical ending. It is the dissolution of an old layer of consciousness, making way for a deeper one to be born. When the 8th house, the house of transformation and rebirth, is activated, we often go through shocks that seem impossible to overcome. But then, if we are willing to listen, we will understand, every collapse is simply the foundation for a sacred awakening. For Sagittarius, this is clearer than ever. They are the symbol of the soul's journey, of growth through experience, of faith forged in loss. If you are going through a period of losing someone, a love, an anchor, a part of your soul, write down, "I allow myself to be reborn from pain." Because right in the place you thought was the end may be the beginning of a journey greater than anything you ever imagined. You know, there's one truth I've discovered after decades of working with birth charts, that is, Sagittarius never truly dies. Even if they fall, grow silent, or disappear, one day, they will return. But what matters is who they return to, why, and in what form. They may continue life, but differently. From someone lively, they become calm. From someone passionate, they become introspective. But one thing never changes, they never stop loving. They only learn to love more wisely, more quietly, and more precisely. I've met Sagittarians who remained single for most of their lives, but when they spoke of the one who made them love deeply, their eyes still lit up. And that showed me, love does not always need a perfect ending. Sometimes, it just needs to be a part of the journey, a light bright enough to guide them through the years ahead. If you once had someone who changed the way you see life, write down, "I am grateful for having loved, even if we are no longer together." Because gratitude is the first step to healing. Not to forget, but to stop the pain. In major astrological cycles, when Jupiter, the ruling planet of Sagittarius, returns to its original position, every 12 years, Sagittarians often go through a deep expansion of faith. That is when they understand that love no longer lies in form, but in energy. An ideal partner doesn't always have to be present daily, doesn't have to live under the same roof, but must offer a spiritual connection, where words are unnecessary, and their soul feels completely accepted. I once told a Sagittarius, "You don't need to wait for someone to love you the way you want. You only need to love yourself so deeply that the one worthy of that love can't help but find you." And she later told me, "The day I stopped searching was the day the universe sent him." No grand gestures. No promises. Just someone who made her feel safe being herself. If you're learning to love yourself more deeply, write down, "I am the one my soul is searching for." Because true love doesn't come from waiting for someone. It comes from becoming the one worthy of the love you desire. For Sagittarius, the absence of a partner does not break them immediately. It is quiet but intense. It's like a bow always drawn, but with no target. Eventually, it tires, loses direction, and falls. And then they blame themselves for no longer being as strong as they once were. But what I want you to understand is that no one can keep the string drawn forever without resting. And sometimes, stillness is not failure. It is the moment to hear more clearly the voice within, that you are worthy of a journey with a companion. If you're blaming yourself for feeling weak without someone, write down, "I deserve a love that makes me want to grow, not one I must strain to hold on to." Because love is not about bracing yourself. It is about returning to the gentleness that already exists within you. I want to close this part with an image I believe will stay in your heart. A Sagittarius, after everything, standing quietly at sunset. No longer rushed. No longer lost. They are not waiting for anyone. But they know, if someone worthy comes, They will arrive at the right time. And they are ready. No longer living as if something is missing, but living as if they are already a complete painting, waiting for someone to step in and behold. Living in fullness they have found within themselves. I once thought, for Sagittarius, living without a partner is like the sun rising without a sky to shine upon. They still glow. They still exist. But that beauty is wasted, forgotten, misplaced in the world. And I realized, not everyone who leaves takes the light with them. But there are those who, when gone, reveal they once were the mirror through which your light was reflected. Sagittarius is like that. They don't need anyone to live. But they do need someone to live as the best version of themselves. Astrology taught me this. Fire signs like Sagittarius carry active, expansive energy, and resist being confined. But what people often forget is that even fire needs to be kept warm. Otherwise, it burns alone until there is nothing left to consume. The absence of a partner does not extinguish Sagittarius's flame, but it leaves them unsure who to burn for, live for, hope for. And then, the fire slowly turns to ash, leaving behind a hollow that cannot be named. If you've ever felt like you're living without a purpose, write down, I choose to live for what sets my soul ablaze. Not just to exist. Because living is not about prolonging breath. It's about waking up each day knowing you are needed, seen, and loved. One of the deepest lessons I've ever learned is that no one can walk a spiritual journey without facing an ultimate loneliness. And Sagittarius, as if by fate, is chosen to go through that journey earlier than others. They are born to seek, to wander, to stumble. But beneath all their travels, what are they truly searching for? Not a new land, but a place called home, where they can drop their guard, lower their bow, and let someone see them fully, in both strength and vulnerability. I remember once, a Sagittarius man told me, I used to think I didn't need anyone. Until I reached the most beautiful place I've ever seen, stood there alone amid vast nature, and realized, I had no one to share it with. And I replied, sometimes, loneliness doesn't lie in not having someone. It lies in having too much to give, and no one sensitive enough to receive it. That is the tragedy of expansive souls like Sagittarius. They love more than they show. And they endure more than they speak. If you're living with a deeply emotional heart that has never been understood, write down, I deserve to be seen, without needing to hide anything. Because when someone truly loves you, they will love even the parts you thought you had to hide forever. In astrology, the connection between the 9th house, the house of ideals and spirituality, belonging to Sagittarius, and the 7th house, the house of partnerships and deep relationships, is often the destined bridge that leads Sagittarius to true love. That love does not come from fleeting passion, but from the meeting of two souls that have searched for each other across many lifetimes. And I believe, deep in my heart, that every Sagittarius has such a person waiting for them. Perhaps in a place they never expected. Perhaps someone they once passed by. Or perhaps, it is themselves, when they are brave enough to love themselves again. If you believe that true love never disappears but only waits for the right moment, write down, I am ready to receive the one who belongs to my soul. Because when you truly open your heart, the one destined for you will have no choice but to find you. I want to share a personal perspective, not from books, not from birth charts, but from my own life. After decades of walking alongside Sagittarius stories, I've realized, they never disappear. Even after heartbreak, even when wounded, even in the absence of love, they continue to exist, quietly but steadfastly. And that makes them extraordinary. Because not everyone can continue giving light while their own heart still bears unhealed cracks. They don't regret having loved. They only regret that someone didn't understand the purity they once offered. And so, they learn to love in silence, hope in quiet, and grow in solitude. But you know what? From that place, they become the very person they once hoped to find. An ideal partner, for themselves. If you are learning to become the companion you once waited for, write down, I am the one love is seeking. Because love doesn't come to fill a void. It comes when you are already whole, and ready to overflow. And if you are hearing these words now in a quiet room, on a dark night, during days when your heart feels empty from the absence of someone, I want you to know, you are not alone. There are thousands of Sagittarians like you, who once thought they couldn't go on. But still lived, still loved, and then, they were answered. Not by someone from the past returning, but by someone new sent by the universe, at the exact moment they stopped resisting and learned to trust again. If you are still listening to these final moments, I know you are not ordinary. You are a soul who has loved deeply, lost, fallen, and is now seeking a meaning beyond it all. And if you are Sagittarius, or carrying the energy of Sagittarius, I want you to be proud. Because not everyone dares to live through the heart. Not everyone dares to love with their whole soul. The death we've spoken about from the beginning is not the end. It is transformation. The absence of a romantic partner in your life does not mean you have failed at love. It only means you are at a very important point on your path. A place where you must learn to face yourself, touch the wounds you've long avoided, and accept that you are worthy of a higher love, one that doesn't make you shrink, doesn't ask you to change, doesn't require you to always be strong. You may be living alone, but that doesn't mean you are lonely. Because somewhere, someone is being guided by the universe to find you. And who knows, perhaps the very act of living fully as yourself today is what's pulling that person closer to you with every step. Keep walking with faith. Because you are not just a Sagittarius. You are the living symbol of faith, of light, of the journey that never gives up. And in the end, those who do not give up on love are the ones who are loved most completely. If something in this message has touched you, write down a promise to yourself. I am ready to open my heart. I am ready to love. And I am worthy of true love. That comment is not just a sentence, it's a signal. A message you send to the universe that you are ready. Ready to receive the sacred love your soul has always longed for. Thank you for listening. Thank you for existing. And thank you for not giving up on yourself.